Hey guys, my name is Christine Castillo, and I get the privilege and honor of talking to you about our new special needs ministry, the Signs and Wonders Ministry. You may have heard just last week, perhaps, Mike Corson talk about this amazing new opportunity we have to reach families that may not have ever really been included very well in their previous church homes. And so that's part of our goal. Our vision is really that we believe that miraculous things can come from really the most unassuming people and places. And to be honest, that's really the heart of Providence. We want to reach those that haven't been reached. And so we know that the Holy Spirit can very mightily use us to speak life and richness into the families that we see back in Providence Kids. So some of the purpose of the Signs and Wonders Ministry is really to help support each child and each family in the best way possible. And that's, of course, going to look very different depending on their needs. Our goal is to make sure that each child is not just in a classroom. We want them to engage. We want them to be filled with the Holy Spirit as much as He allows. We know, though, that sometimes that takes a little extra care. And so what we plan to do is to assign buddies or partners to those kids that need them most. Now, not every child with special needs needs a one-on-one, but there are certainly those kids that would benefit from them. We want to support them, and we want to be able to reassure families, for parents that are in main service, that they don't have to be worried about getting called out every single Sunday, or that there's something that they need to come out and take care of, even as basic as toileting support. And so we're planning on assigning buddies or partners to those kids that need them most. And while those will rotate each Sunday, just like our regular classroom volunteers, we hope to have as much consistency as possible. Now, I tell you all of that because you guys are really the first contact that new families may have besides our greeting team, but new families will have really coming back into Providence Kids. And so we hope to inspire your excitement for this ministry as well. We have been working for several months really trying to figure out what God has planned for us and what kinds of things that He wants us to do and how He can equip us to then support these families. So as a check-in team, your responsibilities are still the same. You're going to be greeting those families with the love and the joy that we see every Sunday anyway. As you collect information, what you're going to be listening for really is anything that a parent may talk about, maybe a previous challenge at a church in the past that they even say, well, we haven't been to church in a long time because it just wasn't worth the effort. It was always stressful knowing what my child was going to do or what they were going to need when they were back in the kids' ministry. And so as you hear about that, you want to obviously be just taking that in. What I have put together with a lot of input from some of our other leaders is what we've called our inclusion and exclusion list. So you will have this laminated at each of those two main check-in stations. To be honest, there's very few things that should be on the name tag. We want to reduce stigma as much as possible because these families deal with it enough in the community. And so the things that should be on the name tag really are more about medical kinds of needs. Obviously, if a child has an allergy, we want to have that on there, or something else that could be an urgent medical need that we need to understand and prevent against. Anything else, even as, I'm going to say, simple as an ADHD diagnosis or something like an oppositional defiant disorder or autism or Down syndrome or anything of the like, we want to really keep those from being on the name tag. We don't want to define the child by their diagnosis. We want to know that child by their name, just like God has knit us in our wombs. And so we want to recognize that child by their name and not have any additional stigma to really deal with. And so refer to that list. If in doubt, leave it out, okay? I am always willing to consult with you, talk with you. A lot of the other Signs and Wonders Ministry team and the volunteers we're training will be also able to probably speak to that if you have any questions. We can always add it in later. if parents start to express a concern of, oh, I don't know, how are you going to call me if he needs help? What if she has an accident? What if? Those are the kinds of families that we want to target. We want to be able to touch their lives in such a way that they feel like they are home. We want to give them support, and that's the language we want to use, talking about support, not needing help. And so if those kinds of conversations start to come up, that's where that little light bulb can go off, and you can say, oh, you know what? We have this ministry that's called Signs and Wonders. And that there is a team of people that are ready and willing to find ways to help your child have just the most meaningful, spirit-driven morning possible. And so you're going to have these, what we call initial contact cards. And this is where you can say, you know what, take a peek at this. Go ahead, read through it, send an email to the email address on the card, and one of our ministry leaders will be able to get back to you, answer any questions you have. Now, following that, just in case they wonder, well, what happens next? Likely myself or one of our other leaders will touch base with the family, and we're going to have them fill out a fairly detailed 3-page child profile. What this allows us to do is to make sure that we're getting as much information as we need. We don't need it all, but what are your child's strengths? What are your child's weaknesses? What areas do they need support in? Even again, as simple as toileting needs for older children, do you want us to call you out of service, or do you want us to take care of it, which we absolutely can. And so that's kind of the next step, and that will help us to understand what kinds of needs that child has, if they need to absolutely be assigned a buddy each time that they're in service, or can we just make sure that the child's specialist, especially in elementary, but that can float to some of the other classrooms if need be, really just has an eye on them more regularly, or can support the other teachers or leaders, volunteers in the classroom. And so once they do all that, again, we hope to just integrate them into the Providence family as seamlessly as possible. We want them to be filled, to be fed, and then allow their children to have the same thing. And that looks very different depending on developmental needs. The last couple things I wanted to mention really quick, sometimes it can be a little nerve-wracking for those that aren't in the mental health field to talk about these kinds of things. And so some of what you can do is mirroring the parents' language. If they talk about a diagnosis of ADHD, or my daughter has this disorder, you can use that language. But what I would really aim towards is talking about how can we support, not how we can help. How we can understand a child's maybe challenges, not talking about disabilities or disorders. So there's some, very nuanced language that can be helpful to think about. The other thing is talking about, if it were to arise, mental health kinds of things rather than mental illness. So again, we try to take as much stigma away as possible. We want these families to feel like, wow, we feel like we can not only be fed here, but we can serve here, we can grow here, we can serve the kingdom, we can serve our community. We want them to become in closer relationship with Christ. We know that miraculous things can come from, again, these most unassuming places, and these are the families that we want to target. So I am so glad that you guys are on that front line. You're that first contact, because you get to introduce them to all of these amazing things that we're going to see through the Spirit's working back in Providence Kids. So thanks guys so much. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks.